Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I had it planned out for this episode to release this week for a long time, and I never even looked to see that it was the same. Well, it's the week after Deadpool and Wolverine release. So if you need more Canadian claw goodness, this is a great place to start because we are going to talk about Giant Size X-Men #1, and it is Wolverine's first adventure as an X-Men. Welcome to Unbuckled Comics. If you're new, welcome. There's a liability form on the back table. Next to the white gloves, we're going to get into a old comic that is quite valuable. All right, so we both read a facsimile edition. These aren't valuable. But anyway, if you're returning, thank you for your continued support. I am your host, Unbuckled Cape, and today we are talking about Giant Size X-Men #1, and it is a sidekick episode. I am bringing on Storm Beagle, aka Sam, from the Retrotopia podcast, and this is me completing the Retrotopia hat trick. I have had Brian, or as I like to call him, Captain N. We have had Captain Alcatraz, aka Alan, and now we are having Storm Beagle, aka Sam, from all three of them from the Retrotopia podcast. So a little bit of celebration here for episode number 70 of the podcast. A little accomplishment as I get a little help from my friends. Before we head out on patrol, let's gather some intel first. Hey, Linktree, linktr.ee/unbuckled comics. That is linktr. Oh, linktr.ee/unbuckled comics. If you go over there, you will see my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter, as well as my Discord. That is what I'm running. Oh, and my YouTube, YouTube is doing really well. I am getting about equal to, so either my reviews over on YouTube have absolute zero, or they have doubled what they have reached on Spotify. So I've been enjoying putting stuff on YouTube and seeing what hits over there versus what has hit on the Spotify, Amazon Music, blah 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 blah. The podcast platforms. So that's been a lot of fun, and I'm going to blow through this relatively quickly because, as you all know, when I bring a guest onto the show, they tend to be longer episodes, but I do think this one is slightly smaller than our typical really long ones. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, aside from my link tree, today is Sunday, and I seen Deadpool, Wolverine, Deadpool. It probably depends on whether you talk to Hugh Jackman or Ryan Reynolds. I will reserve my thoughts. I know that the Deadpool 3 episode that I put out a while ago is a big episode, and, well, look, I did put a little bit of my thoughts in our spoiler thread in the Discord, but I pretty much left it at those thoughts. I'm not going to do that here. 2 days from now, I plan on dropping an emergency, unbuckled, and unscripted episode where I will give a spoiler-free cast. I'll probably spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes spoiler-free. I will sound the alarms, and then we will get into a full-blown spoiler cast, and I will bring my thoughts to you if you have already seen it. If you have not seen it, you do not want me talking about it. Ugh. So I've been having like ankle issues and back issues, and my dad today suggested drinking this tea that he drinks before bed, and he was like, make sure you add something to it because it tastes like dirt. And like, I thought he was like, it just tastes like dirt. Like, it's terrible. I put a ton of honey in this thing, and it tastes like dirt. I don't even know what it is. I brought it home in like 3 little golden packets, and Mrs. Kate was like, why are you bringing home kid catchers? If you catch my drift. And like it's not, it's tea, but it didn't even have tea bags. It's powdered, and the powder is super thick, and I can see it like swimming at the bottom of my mug, and yeah, like tastes right like dirt. Um, Outside of that, guys, I don't have a ton to talk about. Just you know, adjusting to another new schedule with Bub starting a different daycare. The first one we went to didn't work out great. We're really liking this one so far, so that's good. Some things going on at work. I did finish reading The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the oh boy, manga. That's right. Say it the right way, Kate. Say it the right way. I read the manga and really enjoyed that. I do plan on getting more of those. I'm reading some of the Titan stuff now. I just got past the Beast World things. When I'm done with that, I think I'm going to hop back over to the Daredevil and then maybe James Bond. I'm currently reading James Bond 007, the Casino Royale, the original Ian Fleming novel. Doing a quick reread of that for something a little special down the road, as well as I'm going to watch the movie, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you catch my drift. For those of you that know, no. Um, I could open up my book, but I think we've kind of went over everything that's going on, and really, I have our review episodes all in the bag and ready to go up to October. As soon as I get the intro for this episode done, I'm going to record my Green Goblin thoughts, and then we are all recorded almost uh, through September, and then I can start on October. I think I'm going to wait till tomorrow to record my thoughts on Deadpool Wolverine, just because I want to give it some time to settle in and let myself mull it over a little bit more, if that makes sense. Uh, but I really got nothing else to talk about. So, without further ado, let me give way to myself and Storm Beagle.
All right, so joining me for this sidekick episode is uh, Cape Crusader and longtime Patreon Storm Beagle. I really
Hey,
don't
how's it
call you
going?
by your actual name. Like I have a hard time calling you by your name.
My made up name?
Yeah, your
Yes.
made up name. No, no. Welcome to the show, Sam from the Retrotopia podcast. How's it going, buddy?
Not bad. How about you?
Oh, it's life of a podcaster. Technology never wants to work right, especially when you have somebody else joining your show.
Yeah, it always seems like you know, if you have three different podcasts or podcasters get together and try to do something, we probably have like three different or four different ways of doing it. But we get there in the
So
end.
yeah. Well, we're recording this. This isn't published yet. I'll feel better when it's published.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Um. So before we actually get into what we're going to be talking about, why don't you go ahead and plug your little podcast you got?
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, Brian and I do Retrotopia. It's a
Captain N,
retro
not
gaming.
Brian.
All right, Brian, Captain N, Brian, are made up aliases. We do Retrotopia. It is a retro gaming podcast. So we, you know, obviously I was a, well, not obviously, but I was a Sega kid, and Brian's a Super Nintendo kid. And we trade games to play, and um, sometimes we get upset with each other for said
I'm
games.
telling you, man. There for a while, I was every time I'd listen, I'm like, who's gonna be mad this time? And it was just like, when is this going to stop? Because I honestly thought there were like 2-3 episodes where I'm like, they're just doing this now to get back at each other. And you guys don't do a ton of like noticeable titles, right? You do a lot of like more in the weeds stuff.
Yeah, that's what we started with. Like it all started with Ren and Stimpy, right? That was one that Brian was upset about, and then a little bit more recently we had um, Roger Rabbit, which I got a little upset about.
Oh,
But it's
you're
not
missing
all.
the
It's
best one.
yeah, it's not all crappy games though. We got some plans to do some real good ones, and we've got some good episodes in there. We've done Mega Man 2. We just wrapped recording this week on Illusion of Gaia, which was a really fun game. Metal Gear, the NES one, that was a fun one to play. Final Fantasy 3 was one of my favorites. So there's good ones in there. But we
Don't
do
forget
like to.
Animaniacs.
Oh, I would like to. I almost did.
I'm not gonna let you forget it. That was
it, al-
that was too funny.
it almost almost retroactively made me hate the show.
You and I were actually talking a little bit before we started recording. I say a little bit, but the last hour or so. Um, that I forgot to mention Animaniacs. I have a growing cartoon collection that I want to
Yeah,
own so that my kids have it. Animaniacs is probably in my next five that I get.
nice. Yeah, that would be a good add to your collection for sure. There's some fun episodes in there, but
And I
and
do
it
have
was
Bub almost to the point where he does say hello nurse, but it's cute. It's
yeah,
hello, and then he just goes nurse.
add a boy.
No, it's really funny.
just just don't have him doing that when he's like in his 20s or 30s or
Oh, that's
you
his
know
problem by that point.
yeah.
I got two
Oh
kids.
man.
I can worry about having grandkids from the other one. I'll ruin the first one.
Right. You got to do over.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're gonna be talking about giant size X-Men. But my question for you is, what's your history with comics? Are you a lifelong fan, new
Yeah.
fan?
Yeah, this is gonna like if you've got like really intense comic book fans here, they're gonna say like, what's this guy doing here? But not a whole lot. I have some comics, but I was never really a huge collector, and I'm kind of like with my Star Wars history, I guess, I get really into like needing to know all the details, and I just didn't have enough comics to get enough details, so I just didn't really get too into them. I do enjoy them, and I liked all the animated shows and stuff when I was growing up. So X-Men was one of them. But yeah, not a huge history with comics, although I do appreciate them for sure.
And well, what do you have a favorite comic?
Um, I have actually been enjoying a lot. I have a Marvel Unlimited subscription, and I've been going through the old X, like from the beginning, going through the X-Men, and that's been kind of fun because you get to see where it all started and the original crew and how kind of like hokey and 60s it was back then. That's been
Yeah.
kind of fun to go through. Um, but other than that, not really. Like I like stuff that's kind of self-contained. So, I'm a fan of Watchmen. Um, I've got that box set of Lock and Key that I have to dive into, like that kind of stuff where it's its self-contained story, but like when it gets to be like sprawling and like multiple series, like I get that overwhelmed sensation of not knowing where to start.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I hear you. There's a lot of stuff that I would like to read, and especially early on, like before I started doing podcasting, there was a lot of stuff that I was like, oh, I'd like to read this, and then when I really looked at it, it was like, I can't. That's way too much of a deep dive, and even now, there's some stuff that I would like to read that it's that way.
yeah,
But the older comics are typically a little more self-contained, and it is fun to go back for like they're almost like a historical piece because
yeah.
like nobody talks that way anymore.
No, and it's funny because like in the 60s, run of X-Men, um, well, Hank, and then gosh, what's Iceman? Can't
Bobby.
Bobby, yeah, Hank and Bobby, I think, are always going to like trendy Greenwich Village and New York City and like going on dates and stuff. And he's like, hey, we got to go find our girls. And then they're always
Mhm.
having to like dip out of their dates and like do X-Men things and come back. And, like the girls are always pissed off at them.
Yeah,
Just
it's.
like
I
that
mean,
kind of like quaint or like just, I don't know. This is a different time.
yeah, and I'm kind of glad you brought that up, but we'll get to it later. There's a point in this comic that it's a different time where they're going, hey, they call, say our girls, and it's funny, but then
Oh,
they make some
y-
really weird decisions.
yes.
And
Yes.
even in this book, which I did not expect, I mean, I talked, Chris joined me for X-Men Days of Futures Past, and I think Wolverine was smoking and drinking, but
Mm-hmm.
they, the comic version of bleeding out, like the word shit or something like that, they won't put that in, but
Yeah.
Wolverine can sit there and pound a 6-pack in 2 panels, so
Yeah. Well,
um,
there's like um in those old X-Men comics, you have Marvel Girl, Jean Grey, and she is definitely like attractive redhead and like she's powerful, but like she's still the girl. She could come along with the X-Men, but they still do definitely treat her like she is a damsel in distress, even though she's quite capable on her own. And
well,
yeah,
right,
and
and
this one
later
they do the
becoming
same.
like one of the most powerful characters in Marvel lore, so
Yeah. Yeah, and they do the same thing with Storm here.
yeah, that
Uh,
that's that's kind of what I was hinting
yeah.
at. But
Yeah.
anyway, before we dive into that, did you happen to look up any of the creators at all?
No, no, I didn't get that
Okay, so
into
I'm
it
gonna
with this.
burn through them, and you tell me
Hmm.
if you ever heard of them before.
Sure.
Len Wen, he
Is
is a
that a name?
writer.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a
yep.
name. Okay. Well,
Lenwin.
okay. Oh, I would pronounce that as Ween.
You see, I get so nervous
that's
about
just
names.
that's just my
Maybe
being
it is Lenwin.
immature.
I don't know.
I'm just being immature.
That's what I appreciate about you.
Yeah.
A lot of Batman, Spider-Man the
Okay.
animated series, New Teen Titans, and the Mighty Thor.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah, right. I seen the name and I'm like, well, I don't know. And then I read what he's credited with, and I was actually quite surprised that I didn't recognize the name. Another writer was Arnold Drake.
Nope. Not
Doom
ringing any bells.
Patrol Adventures of Bob Hope. Everyone's hero.
Is that a comic?
Yes, yes,
That sounds
Bob Hope, and was the other one Buddy Holly? He had two that were like that.
what? That sounds so boring. That sounds
They
like
were.
almost like a crummy, like, I don't know.
I'm
Uh
pretty sure they were Archie comics.
okay, yeah, it
Which
sounds
would
like I
sound.
like Archie comics, but just like reading a comic about Bob Hope sounds like just really boring.
uh, I mean, they were cartoony, and I'm sure he did wacky stuff. But anyway, Plastic Man and Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Roy Thomas, another writer. Conan the Barbarian, Incredible Hulk, Fantastic Four. Linda Fiat, another writer. The Cat, which is something I never heard of, and then a bunch of X-Men.
Okay.
So in this teeny tiny book of 68 pages, we are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, four, and then the fifth writer is Chris Claremont. You
Okay.
recognize that name?
Nope.
No, you should have said yes.
Yeah, I know. I probably am like someone's gonna be like screaming at whatever device they're listening on. Like, who is this? Who is this guy?
I
He
wasn't. I
has no
wasn't
idea.
worried about quote unquote fans turning the show off until you said no. Now I'm
Uh-oh.
kind of
Uh-oh.
worried.
Sorry,
um,
everyone.
so Chris Claremont is pretty much credited with saving the X-Men franchise in the
Okay.
comics.
Nice.
Uh, After their initial run, they did not do well, and they really really dipped. And then in the, I want to say 80s,
Mm-hmm.
late 80s, they gave the franchise to Claremont and Jim Lee. Jim Lee, the
Yeah, that
artist, and
yeah,
Chris,
that
the
name I
writer.
recognize. So Jim Lee.
Yeah, good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Unfortunately, he's not on this comic, and we're not going to be talking about him.
Well, I
But
recognized it, so that counts.
but Chris Claremont did have something to do with this. He was in a small part of it, and I actually think he might have been editor for this. But
Cool.
so at least there was a big name, and then artists we had Dave Cockrum. Do you need time to giggle, or can we keep going? Again, tons of X-Men, Avengers, Superboy, Warren Roth, Secret Hearts, Falling in Love, Superman's Girlfriend, Girls Love Story, Young Romance, and then
Oh,
Apache Kid. So a ton of like teenage romance, and then a really hardcore Western. That
okay.
doesn't quite make sense. And then John Verporith. Um, he was the inker. Millie the Model, Fantastic Four, The Eternals, Amazing Adventures, My Love, and Frankenstein. So
Hmm.
I was really shocked when I started looking at the creative team that went into this book. Typically, I only have like a maximum of 5 people, and we had 5 writers on this.
Yeah, it's a big
And
one.
it's not like it's that in depth of the story. I mean, chapter 1 is literally just each page is Professor X going to assemble a new X-Men team.
Yeah, yeah, and then in some cases, like it was funny because some of the new team only got like 2 panels.
Yeah.
They're like also were like for example, like Sunfire, he goes to Japan, is like also Professor X went to Japan and talked to this guy who is Sunfire. Next.
Banshee was pretty short too, but he was an X-Man beforehand, so it was just kind of like, hey, I need you to come back.
Yeah, he's in Nashville. He's at the Grand Ole Opry, and then it's like Professor X goes and finds Banshee. Then he goes and finds Storm, and like Storm gets like 3 pages.
So basically the reason for that is uh they were not the ones that got longer weren't established characters.
Okay, that makes sense.
So Sunfire was already established.
Yeah.
And Banshee was an X-Men prior to this. So they
Okay.
didn't they were showing the other X-Men characters where they were at before they got brought into the fold. Wolverine was at, I forget what they actually called it.
Oh,
He
his like military base.
Yeah, I not too long ago I read a comic that actually that was in. I can't remember what it was called, but he was working for the Canadian government.
Right.
And
Weapon
in
X.
in this comment they mentioned that he was called Weapon X,
Mm-hmm.
and he was not a well-known character. So in this book they had Professor X go there and talk him into leaving, which it's funny how each and every one of them overreact at first, and then Professor X is like, it's very important. Well,
Oh,
okay, say it's
well, I
important, like.
well, why didn't you say so at first? Yeah. I can't read comics with Wolverine in them without hearing the 90s X-Men Wolverine voice.
Oh yeah, it's not Hugh Jackman.
No, not at all. It's whatever like weird, and like the accent of that guy in that show, or like whoever does the voice of Wolverine, is like kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah,
But
it
I always
doesn't
hear
sound
it.
Canadian.
Yeah. It's
It's
like
like they were like, it's like they asked him to do a Canadian accent, but he had no idea that Canada even existed.
right. It's like I don't know. Just kind of sounds gruff, right? It's like, sure. Yeah, you're good.
Um, so and that kind of comes to the point where I said about earlier, like, you know, it's so neat and clean, but then when Professor Xavier goes to get Storm, she's completely topless for some reason.
Oh yeah, she's like almost naked. It's like, oh, her hair covers her boobs and she's got like a loincloth on. And like, all right, can we talk about so Storm is originally from Kenya, and her people like try to give her offerings to make rain for their crops or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, aside from being a little bit reductive, and I mean, the same goes for Thunderbird. When we get to Thunderbird, it's like, oh man, we just were not we just did not know how to deal with other cultures, I guess. Like, they don't look African, they just look generic other, and then they're like sacrificing to Storm, and like Storm even says, and her name is like Aurora or something like that, which
Yep.
is kind of hard to say.
Aurora.
Aurora.
It's
She's like, don't
Wolverine calls her Oro.
Oro. Yeah, that's
Yep.
easier to say. Uh, but it's like
No, I'm sorry.
Professor
I'm sorry.
X.
I'm sorry. It's
Yeah,
Roar. He calls her
Roar.
Roar.
Oh, I
Yeah.
like that. That's even better. Um, I have in my notes like Professor X comes in as like calling her to a higher purpose. It's like, but it seems like she's already doing something that's pretty good, like, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she is keeping the villagers alive by growing their crops for them because there's no
Right.
rain.
Yeah. So I was like, so what are they gonna do now? Now they're not gonna have rain because Professor X just drops in, rolls in here, and is like, "Hey, come. What I have is very important." Okay.
Well, I mean, it was mutant kind. She was helping humankind. Professor X is only concerned with mutant kind, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Or well,
It-
he's both, but it's like my purpose is higher than whatever you're doing here, which
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
we don't see it in this comic at all, but it is well documented that early Professor Xavier is not a good person.
No, he's got a checkered past, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Um
Um,
oh, that first like opening panel I thought was really cool, where they had the original X-Men in the background, and then these new characters, or quote unquote new characters. Not all of them are new characters. They're just, you know, kind of like a reboot or a refresh, like they're in the foreground. That was a neat panel.
What's funny? I read this book today, and I like. Are
Oh,
you talking? Are you talking about the cover?
yeah, not the cover. Like the first page with like the title on it, which the title says Second Genesis, but it's also
Oh,
referred to
because
as, yeah,
right, because the front of this says Deadly Genesis,
Deadly Genesis. Yeah. And
but
then
then the first, yes, okay,
right. So
I
then
actually
in
have
the
it up, and
background, like Marvel Girl, Angel, Cyclops, Beast, and Iceman are like all in the background. And then in the foreground, you have Wolverine, Storm, Banshee, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Sunfire, and Thunderbird.
you know what? I don't know if I seen that. I think I just opened up to
Oh,
the other page and just started this. I think this is the first time I'm looking at it because Beast looks creepy.
yeah, he does. He looks weird, but it's cool artwork. It's like a cool concept.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, Beast did look a little weird, didn't he?
yeah. That's
And
so.
he's not in this at all. When they
No,
go, yeah,
they
when
do
they go
mention him
rescue them.
though.
Yeah, I think they they actually kind of rag on him when they're getting in the jet for the first time to do whatever mission Professor X sends them on. They're like, "Well, Beast is off doing his own thing, and he's too good for us." And then
Yeah,
that's all you
kind
hear
of.
of him. Yeah,
Yeah, he graduated.
he graduated, right?
So when he graduates, he kind of goes off and does his own thing for a while, and that's when he I believe that's when he tries to get the cure, and it ends up just making him blue and hairy.
Yes. Okay, so that's how they explain the. I haven't gotten to that point yet in my read through, but that makes sense. It's kind of like how um, you have to retcon certain things, or like, or that's just not even a retcon. That's just a choice that they made to
Yeah,
make him blue and hairy. But it's also like Star Trek with like how the Klingons look different in different series, and they explain it away different ways.
yeah. I'll pretend I know what you're talking about.
some yeah, some people listening will.
Yeah. So anyway, chapter 2,
Mm-hmm.
we get probably the best explanation for costumes fitting superheroes perfectly every time
I
that we've ever had.
I made the same note. I was like, that was the biggest, like, pull it out of your butt. Like, this is just how superhero suits work.
They are made of unstable molecules, so because they are moving around, they just conform to your body
Right.
style.
Unstable molecules. Like, that just doesn't, that's not how science works.
And
But
and it's funny because we're into chapter 2 of this book, and really all we've done is laugh and giggle at the decisions they made, but this
yeah.
is what makes it entertaining.
Yeah, it's pulpy fun at its best. I mean, you're not getting a deep story here, and you're not getting anything incredibly, you know, we're not dealing with big questions or anything. It's just fun. Um, did you notice the name drop? They said that Reed Richards designed
Yes.
the molecules or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Which I was actually a little bit surprised about.
It makes sense because he's a stretchy man and he needs clothes that fit his stretchy man body.
I didn't even make that connection though.
Yeah.
Like I just was like, oh yeah, Reed Richards developed it, but I never made the connection that like Reed Richards was like, how the hell do I get my shirt to move with my arm?
Yeah, he's the one that most needs form-fitting, comfortable uniforms.
How comes he never gave Hulk a shirt?
You know, I don't. That's a good question. Um, he could use Hulk could use a little what is it, like stretch fit, like when you get the pants with the
Yeah.
elastic a little bit.
Yeah. So anyway, the X Men, the original X Men.
Yes.
This chapter 2 was more of backstory. They go off to this island to look for a mutant that Xavier has never felt power like this before.
Yeah, like was detected by Cerebro, and they were like, "Hey, we got to go out and get this. We got to go find whoever this is before someone else does, because this is a very powerful mutant."
And they land on the island of Krakoa,
Mm-hmm.
and well, we don't know what happens.
Trying to think.
Cyclops wakes up, everyone's gone. He's in the jet flying back to Westchester. And he has like no idea what happened. He just knows the rest of the X-Men are missing. And that's when Xavier goes and gathers up the rest of them, and chapter 2 ends with a new group heading off. And I say a group because they are very, very far from a team.
Yeah, it's kind of the pulpy or funny part of this is like, oh, my first crew. It's like, oh, it's like if you're a Futurama fan, like how the professor um hires a new crew and then he keeps alluding to like the old crew and they're just like skeletons. It's like, oh, my old crew, and it's just they're all dead.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably only ever watched like one episode of
Oh,
Futurama.
damn. Well, anyways, it's the same as X-Men basically, right? Because it's a professor who hires a crew to replace his old
Yeah,
crew.
yeah, right. But no, it is kind of the whole, like, they don't get along, and Xavier's whole thing is we're doing something for the better of mutant and humankind. And when he goes and saves Nightcrawler in the first chapter, Nightcrawler's being hunted by a bunch of villagers,
Hmm.
and Xavier promises something better, and he brings them with all the mutants, and these mutants are kind of just as hateful as what the humans are towards each other. Like they clearly do not like each other.
Yeah, they definitely have some growing to do as a team, especially because Xavier just slapped them together and and then sent them out. There's like no, uh, I mean, there's not really time for it because this is one book with 5 chapters, but it's like there's no sequence of them training or anything. Even for them explaining away that they're all from different countries, Professor X just gives them like a telepathic crash course in English. It's like, well, that's simple.
Yeah.
Now they can all speak English.
So you said something there that kind of makes me curious. So we're gonna get through these 4 chapters because I
Yeah.
kind of want to bring that back up. So in chapter 3, the new X-Men team divide up. to go hunt on the island. But the second they, two of them take the south side of the island, two on the west, to the east, to the north.
Right.
And instead of searching the island, they end up just all walking to the same place immediately, which
Yeah,
was
because once they land, well, the jet disappears. So Cyclops and Thunderbird are the ones left in the jet, and then the jet disappears, and they all have to like make their way towards this temple that just appears, which is kind of weird. Um,
and in chapter 4 it becomes a little less weird because
mhm.
Korako is actually a living indestructible island.
Yeah, that was cool.
Well, flipping through the pages when I first seen it, I thought, oh, this is gonna be, and it's really funny that I can't think of his name right now. The only name that I can think of is Davy from when I had Mrs. Unbuckled guess who it was from our Masters of Fear.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Man Thing, that's his
Man
name.
Thing. Yeah,
At first I
it
thought it
does
was
look
Man
like
Thing,
it.
and I was like, oh, cool, Man Thing's in this, and then it turns out it's the actual island. Um,
Yeah, it was like you see that at the start of chapter 4, where it's called The Island That Walks Like a Man, and then it's got all this just quick history of what happened to create this weird island that's a giant mutant, and it's like nuclear testing and radioactive fallout and stuff, and it explains away all the weird, like, these aren't booby traps and weird experiment animals or whatever. Like, this isn't some singular mad scientist type guy setting these traps for the X-Men as they're trying to make their way to the temple. It is just a living organism of mutant. It's like just giant mutant ecosystem that's also turned into a giant kind of kaiju almost.
yeah, yeah, and it's feeding off of the X-Men.
Yeah, that was cool too. And I like how it captured the original X-Men, including Cyclops, we find, and then it lets him go to kind of like throw out there as bait to bring more mutants back, and it almost works, right?
Well, Andy says he influences Xavier's mind,
Yeah, he's
which is
got.
why they never trained.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I must have missed that little blip because I
Well,
know that
I
they
mean, it
were kind
doesn't
of
say
linked
it,
a
but
little bit.
that's what makes sense, right? Because he says about he influences Xavier to bring him more food, and
Hmm.
Xavier kind of uncharacteristically gathers a group of people and throws them into something.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Um, so Xavier is like, um, do you want them trained or plain? And then he's
Yeah.
like, plain is good. You want fries? No, just the mutants is good.
So, not that a living island isn't zany enough, but how do you kill a living island?
Oh, well, they found a really interesting way to do it. And it, like, just like their molecular unstable whatever uniforms, it has no basis in actual science, although they tried.
So, throwing an island into space definitely was not on my bingo card.
No, I was like, okay, so Xavier tries to like do the link with it. He realizes what's going on and tries to kind of disable it, and I think he succeeds in temporarily disabling the island a little bit and allowing them to kind of come up with a game plan. And uh, Storm uses a thunderstorm to charge up Lorna Dane,
Yep.
uh, who then blasts, like, I guess it's just she becomes so powerful with the electromagnetism that it shoots to the Earth's core.
Yep.
And
And
then
the Earth's core just kind of throws it into the atmosphere, or the stratosphere, rather.
yeah, which I guess it's not a problem. That I think if the core of the Earth, if something drilled through the Earth and hit the core, I think we'd be in real big trouble.
Well, it did create that giant whirlpool that Iceman had to create a little snow globe for them to
Oh,
survive in for a little bit.
oh, I think it would create more than a whirlpool. I think stuff would come out. I think we'd have a big problem.
And that, you know, that's almost exactly where the story ends too, is them, like, their ship resurfaces out of the water
Oh,
inexplicably, and then they jump in the ship and fly back, and that's the end. We
yeah,
do
Ice
get like, kind of little origin stories for Cyclops, Iceman, and Jean Grey. And
mhm.
again, what you said earlier about the kind of mistreatment, Cyclops is like 5 pages long, Iceman is like
Oh,
four
yeah.
pages long, and Jean is two.
Yeah, I was, like, going through actually, like, the print in the speech bubbles was bigger too, and they go out of their way to have a little box that says, "And we let a girl write this one."
Yeah.
It's like, "What the hell?" Oh,
Uh,
man. They're like, I guess, right, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I guess their
mm,
heart was in the right place. They just didn't make, like, a character that was empowered. It was like, um this is how my powers work. If I'm out on the street, I can stop a purse thief.
yeah.
And then and the other one was like, I'll never be tied up if you're waiting for me for a date. Because she
Yeah.
can untie her bonds with her mental powers or whatever, so she won't be late. She'll still be pretty for your date.
Yep. And I mean, we can look at that stuff now and cringe at it,
Yeah, for
or,
sure.
you know, laugh at it like this, but it was just part of the times. And that's, so the comic that you and I bought, we both bought it. I assume you bought it, right?
Oh, I found it on Unlimited.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
I bought it on Amazon for like $5,
Yeah.
and it's a facsimile.
Yep.
So it is basically a reprint of a book that came out however long ago, and it is the exact same
Yeah, I didn't
as the
realize that
original
even
print.
the ads would be in there because I mean, other comics that are on Marvel Unlimited don't have the ads in them. They do have the, like, letters to Stan or whatever pages, but, like, ads like this, this really took me back because I did have a few, like a handful of comic books when I was a kid that I would just read over and over again. And they had, I had some older ones that had really old, like, Sea Monkey ads and X-Ray
Yep.
Specs and all that and this is exactly that kind of shit. Was like, oh, sorry, not to curse.
That's right.
This was that exact stuff. There was like pyramid schemes for young boys to sell, like, newspapers or whatever. It's like, sell them for 18 cents and 9 cents is your profit. It's like,
I'm
this is a pyramid scheme.
I'm
How
flipping
many
through it now, and
parents?
it's like there's one that says,
Yeah.
"Who else wants He-Man's body?" And it's like some for
Yeah.
training.
I wrote that one down too. There was oh wait, there was I wrote down notes of, like, my favorite ones in here because these are really fun. There was genuine police handcuffs.
Yep.
Um Mail or there was a bunch, there were a couple of martial arts courses, which of
Uh,
course they knew their demographic, like, these kids are getting beat up, so they need to learn some martial arts, these comic book nerds.
well, one of the big one was fast track to a cool job, train at home to be a motorcycle mechanic. I
Yeah, I
had
saw that
no
one
idea
too.
how you do that.
Yep, right.
And then
Oh,
there's one that's like Marvel Hero stick-ons. You get all
mhm.
18 for only $2.50, and they're gigantic Marvel stickers. I actually thought about calling the phone number for that
Yeah,
one.
I kinda wanted those. Um, there's, right next to that motorcycle mechanic ad, there was an ad for a stick-on fake beard, and, like, you could get, like, a beard mustache, like, mutton chop so that you look cool.
Enjoy an exciting romantic look, impressive anytime.
Yeah. Oh, these were great. And my favorite though was the Spider-Man one-page mini comic for Hostess fruit pies,
I
where
didn't see that one.
yeah, so basically, like, really quickly Spider-Man convinces some baddies not to be bad anymore by giving them delicious Hostess fruit pies
That's pretty
and
funny.
not using his powers at all. And he's just, I don't know where he's keeping him on that suit.
Yeah. Wherever they are, they got to be warm.
This one was in my
But
butt crack.
more to the point, that
Yeah.
one of the more enjoyable things about this comic for me was the fact that it is a facsimile. They didn't tweak anything. You
Yeah.
got exactly what came out, and yeah, some of it is dated, but I mean, it's just so enjoyable to go back to what the comics were, and I'm looking up. This is 1975 when
Yeah.
this came out, so it's just
Yeah. That's almost, that's going on like 50 years ago now. So that's right.
yeah, we
Is my
messed
math
up. We should have
correct?
shaved it for next year.
No, that's fine. It's good. It's 49 is the magic number. But yeah, I mean, nearly 50 years ago that this came out, and it obviously shows its age, as we've said, but it's with the facsimile version, it is an exact slice of what, a comic book reader would have read then. Um, and I like that about it. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, and I had said to you earlier today that I was actually kind of worried about this. We talked about Lock and Key. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
doing V for Vendetta. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really want to do that one because I wanted to save that for maybe a milestone episode.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a
I
big
think we
one.
talked about a Star Wars comic,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course X-Men, and you wanted to go with X-Men, and I was praying that you went with Star Wars or um Lock and Key, and then you kind of said that you didn't think Lock and Key would be good, so I was like, okay, it's got to be Star Wars, right? He's you
Yeah.
picked X-Men, and I'm like, oh no, I got to do this
Oh,
again.
I picked this one because I thought you'd want to read it more than you'd want to read a Star Wars comic.
after after Days of Futures Past, I was just like so disappointed with that comic.
Yeah.
And like going into this, knowing that it was only a giant sized single issue,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that it was smaller, I was like, man, I don't know if I can do a good episode, and I'm probably not going to like it because I didn't like Future Past. And, you know, like obviously this giant size X-Men came out last year, this facsimile.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've seen it before, but I'm like, why? Like I was so worried, but I'm actually glad that we did it. Um, because it was better. I enjoyed this more than what I enjoyed Futures Past.
Well, that's good because I know you didn't like Days of Future Past as much. So this one didn't have, like we said, a lot of deep substance or anything. It was just kind of pulpy and fun, and that's what I enjoyed about it the most. And I think that um, X-Men can deal with some deeper themes sometimes because it's, they're persecuted, and each of them have their own personal problems that might or might not have to do with their powers and all that kind of stuff. And that's what draws me to the X-Men and Watchmen too, is like they have that kind of real texture that is mixed in with, what's obviously a fantasy, but this one was just fun.
And that's why Marvel really turned the tables. Back when comics started to become popular, DC really, they had the monopoly on the game, and then stuff like Spider-Man and X-Men and those characters that had more real world problems really got Marvel to be the viable company that they became.
Mm-hmm.
And then in more recent years, I want to say like maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, DC started to come back, and they're, I mean, I don't even know who would be the front runner right now. Marvel puts out a ton of comics right now. I mean, they just
Yeah,
it's really no different than the MCU. They just push out whatever they can.
they have a
Um
lot of licenses too.
yeah,
um,
yep.
when you boot up Marvel Unlimited, you're getting like Planet of the Apes, you're getting all the Star Wars. There's, Alien. There's like a bunch of like, because obviously you've got like the 20th Century Fox connection, so you're getting all
Yep.
the like movie tie-in stuff.
Yep.
Um,
So, but the X-Men that had those real world problems is part of the reason why Marvel was able to turn the tide for a while at least and be the predominant comic book publisher.
mhm.
uh, and that's no mistake that X-Men was really popular at the same time. People really really like that stuff. One day I will find an X-Men comic that I like. It just hasn't hit me, or that I love. I like this
Yeah,
book, um,
yeah.
but I don't love it. One day I will get there. I just haven't found my story. But there's Chris mentioned it when we did the Days of Future Past episode that X-Men was a soap opera,
Yeah, kind of is. There's some high drama in there.
and that worked for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I'm not overly into the soap opera stuff, but look, I get it. Like I grew up liking X-Men. I just never read comics, and
Mhm.
I'm an X-Men fan. Actually, complete and total coincidence. I didn't think about it until now. I'm looking at my computer screen and I can kind of see my reflection in it. I'm
Mhm.
wearing an X-Men t-shirt right now.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah. I didn't try it. It's just the shirt that I've been wearing, when I get out of the shower. It's just a shirt that I throw on.
I thought
Um,
you were going to say, well, it is the one I've been wearing for the past several days.
oh, no, no, I finally
take
put
a
that one
take a
into.
shower.
Um, but so like I like X-Men. Wolverine when I was little was always one of my favorite heroes.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so I and I'm not really sure why I'm drawn to them, because every time I dive into something X-Men related, it's like, well, that kind of stunk. The movies
Yeah.
back in the day were awesome, and then I revisited them here not too long ago, and I went, well, kind of wish I wouldn't have done that.
Well, what's cool too, and I thought about with this issue in particular was what other franchise or just like comic series has such a deep roster that you can completely toss out your original lineup and just come up with seven like completely different mutants and just throw them in. Like that's kind of what I like about it too, is I've always enjoyed either singular heroes with deep rogues galleries like a Batman or Spider-Man, or something like X-Men where it's just like there's just so many wacky mutants out there, and like sometimes they join forces and they're switching sides and there's all kinds of like intrigue, and I don't know, it's fun. It's just you never know what you're going to get sometimes when you open an X-Men book. There's just something crazy or someone you haven't seen for a while lurking around the corner.
Mama always said X-Men was like a box of chocolates.
It
You
is.
never
It
knew
is
what
like a
you were gonna
box of
get.
mutant chocolate.
But no, I actually completely agree. I think part of the draw to X-Men is the variety that they have.
Hmm.
And speaking of variety, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, which X-Men team do you prefer out of the two here? The old team with Beast and Angel and Iceman and Miss Marvel, or the you know
Mm.
loosely termed new team with Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Nightcrawler, Sunfire, and Poundstar, or Thunderbird.
Um,
Poundstar, Proud Star.
the Pound Star. uh,
It
I wonder
is
what
like getting close to midnight,
what
so
would Pound Star's power be? Don't answer that one.
yeah.
um, I think, man, because I grew up on the '90s animated series, I would have to say probably the second. Although if I say that, it's missing Beast, and Beast is my favorite, and it's Angel I could take or leave. He's just kind of a dude with wings. Some of them have powers that are kind of lame, but um, yeah, you get Wolverine, you get Colossus, who's really cool too. Nightcrawler, Storm in particular. The others are fine, but um, yeah, I do like the new team, and I like that you can just change up your team whenever, like they can come and go too.
Yeah. I like the characters of the second team here, but I honestly think the first group is more interesting.
Oh yeah, well the having read a bunch of the old ones, the original group has more. There's more history there with their relationships. So these ones come in and they're all just kind of like bickering and they don't really know each other.
Oh, and I didn't even I forgot about Havoc because I'm looking at the cover and Havoc's not on the cover, but he is in this.
Yeah, and gosh, what was her name? They don't give her like a cool like magnet girl or whatever. Lorna,
Isn't she Polaris?
is that like her name? They just
I
call her
think
Lorna Dane,
yeah, I think
which
eventually she will.
sounds like those cookies, Lorna Doone or whatever.
My wife loves those.
Yeah. It's just like when I read the name, I was like, so Cyclops needs to shoot electricity at a cookie and then
Yeah. Yeah, she's Polaris.
Polaris. Yeah, they don't call her Polaris in this though.
No, which is weird.
Yeah.
She is the daughter of Magneto.
Oh, here's one last thing here. And they put it on the very last page of chapter 4, and I thought this was really neat, and I kind of want to see what follows this right afterwards. But they have this thing that says there's like they all escaped, right? That's great, but now there's 13 X-Men. So now what? Like
What are they all gonna do?
almost like a enter the arena, who will survive. Who's going to be the core team out of this group of 13 mutants. That I thought that was fun
Yeah.
and a fun question to think about. I bet that was, at the time, if you were a kid reading this in 1975, you were probably pretty stoked.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, that's kind of hard to imagine what it would have been like reading that in 1975. I mean, that
Yeah.
had to be we're sitting here joking around about it, but I bet that was like one of the most thrilling things that you ever read.
Yeah, and I try to think about that in terms of, you know, I don't know, watching a Star Wars movie. Like, what did this feel like? Or like try to forget all the background knowledge I have now, and like the people that were seeing it for the first time when it first came out didn't have that, so it was all fresh and new. That's really an interesting thing to think about, or try to put yourself in that, in that position. You just can't, because you have all this background knowledge.
Yeah. Well, speaking about things to think about,
Mm-hmm.
um, I have a grading system that I give comics here.
Yeah,
Have you thought about what you were going to grade it?
yeah. Okay, so you have to remind me what it's like. Pick it up. There's pass, right? And then there's
Yep.
pick
So
it up.
it's
Hmm.
from best to worst. It's what are you doing?
Yeah,
As in, like this should be the next comic you read.
yeah.
Get on it. Within the next 5 to 7 comics, this should be
Hmm.
one of the next 5 to 7 things you read. As long as you're an avid reader.
Yeah. What's
Pick it
the one
up.
out? Yeah, pick it up. I would say pick it up.
Um,
It's not gonna blow your mind, but it's fun. It's worth it. But you don't have to like drop what you're doing to read this.
I wrote in my notes, pick it up,
Yeah.
and I did that earlier today. I finished reading it. I don't know. I think at lunchtime.
Hmm.
But the more it's stewed, the more I think I'm actually going to change it to a get on it. And
Okay.
and and hear me out.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a timepiece, right? It has the old ads. It's
Yeah.
goofy. Yeah, there's some things that are a little dated, but you get to see the first meeting between Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler. It was a pretty important comic to the X-Men mythos.
That's true.
I'm not current with X-Men, but I'm sure it got retconned at some point,
Yeah.
knowing the X-Men. But and then you had the original team. So, like you said, they mention it. There's 13 X-Men in this comic
Hmm.
for the first time ever, and it just I I enjoyed reading it. I really really did, and I'm glad this is what we went with. I don't think it's something that anyone needs to run out and buy. And something that I also took into consideration with this that I almost never do when thinking about, should you read it or shouldn't it? But I got it for like $5 on Amazon.
Oh yeah, if you can find it for relatively cheap, or like I read it on Marvel Unlimited. If you have Unlimited, it's just you can just search giant size X-Men and kind of scroll through some of the other giant sized quote unquote series that they have, but it's right there. And yeah, it's got all the funky ads and it's like a time capsule. It's cool.
So yeah, I think for me anyway, I think it's a get on it.
Yeah, I could be swayed to a get on it, or like a pick it up plus.
Yeah, pick
If
it
you
up
do
plus.
pluses.
So well, I think that's gonna do it for us. We're nearing an hour here on a
Yeah.
comic that only had 68 pages, which is pretty incredible. Um,
we had some extra discussion in there, so hopefully
well, this
everyone
was just
stuck
a
around.
it was a giant sized episode.
Yeah, there we go. Giant sized, unbuckled. Just yeah, you can copyright that if you want to.
Yeah, we'll see if it sticks.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, before we get out of here, why don't
Yeah.
you remind everyone of who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Oh yeah. I am one half of the Retrotopia podcast, or one third. We've been mixing our buddy Alan in there a little bit. So we're kind of become a trio of dudes that like to play old video games and talk about them. And you can catch us on anywhere you find podcasts. Retrotopia is the name, and we've got I believe 25 or 26 episodes now. So going strong, and we're gonna keep going, and it's been fun. So we're gonna continue to do what we do over there. Um, and since you tipped your hand, and you were hoping to talk about Darth Maul, maybe we can do Son of Dathomir next if you want to have me on again.
Yeah, yeah, I'm down to do a Star Wars. Now, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. Like
Yeah.
I've seen the first movie that had Kylo Ren in it, and then that is where my Star Wars stopped. Well, that's not true. I seen the first two seasons of Mandalorian, but then that was it. But
So wait. You've only seen The Force Awakens and 2 seasons of Mandalorian.
no, 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 up to
Oh,
that point.
oh,
Up to that
I was gonna
point.
say, like, whoa, that's a weird, I guess.
No, no. And to be honest, I hardly remember the original trilogy.
Okay. Did you watch Clone Wars when it was out?
Mhm.
Okay, because that would have been like right in your like growing up time, I'm sure.
Yeah, but not a ton.
Okay.
Like I remember some of it, but not a ton.
Okay. Because
And
Son of
and the only
Dathomir,
reason I
yeah.
remember the prequels so well is because during COVID, my job was to just sit in a vehicle and watch to make sure that people were going where they were supposed to, and I was second shift, so like by 5 o'clock, I was basically done working and had to be there another 6 hours or whatever.
Oh,
So
geez.
I was watching movies, and for whatever reason, I was like, I think I'm just gonna watch the Star Wars, the sixth Star Wars film in order, and I got called to go back to my normal job after I finished the third one. So
Oh,
I
nice.
actually never
Okay.
got to the original trilogy.
Oh, geez. Well, get on that, and then also, Son of Dathomir is a fun one because it's a Darth Maul story, but it ties in to the what happens in the Clone Wars and kind of in and around that era. So that's always fun.
Yeah, I could be convinced of that. One more question for you: Who's Alan?
Oh, Captain Alcatraz.
Oh, you guys gave him a fake name too.
Yeah, he's got a fake name.
Oh, okay. No, I need to get him back on here.
Yeah, he
Um,
does the. He's been helping us with the gentleman's interlude, and yeah, we got some more fun guest stuff planned for him. So he's going to be joining us more often
nice,
for regular episodes. So it's been a lot of fun.
nice. Well, I think that about wraps this one up. So,
Yeah.
thanks for joining me. I almost said for having me on. I feel like you're having me on because you directed me the whole way to get this whole thing to work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm not an expert by a long shot, but yeah.
We just channeled our what would and there I almost said it. I almost said Captain N. We had to channel our what would Brian do.
Yes, yes.
So
What would Captain N do? Do you need to kick it to me for my famous Retrotopia catchphrase to end the episode? Which is like just always a struggle. I don't know how to end an episode, so
well,
have
why don't I
yeah.
show you?
Okay.
So that's gonna do it for us. Giant size X-Men. We're gonna give it the rating of get on it. And until next time, guys, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes.